readers,
reviewers,
listeners.
lend us your ears.
And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage.
Hello and welcome to the channel today. I'm Will. This is my brother Ed. Today we're talking about something quite close to our heart. Audiobooks.
It's pretty close to our hearts because it's...
In our ears. It's pretty close indeed. Very nice, Ed. I checked and I have listened to 134 audiobooks.
Wow.
Which is more books than I've actually read of the historical fiction genre, which is my second most read genre.
And I've checked and I've read more. So...
Did you check? You have listened to all, because you listened to audiobooks, I think, for about a year and a half.
I'm an old man, Will. I'm an old man.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I used to listen to Papa Gwyn's audiobooks. That's all I'd that's all I read. That was just what I'd do. Just listen to them. So,
repeat.
On repeat.
On loop.
And this year was the first time you've actually read Papa Gwyn's works, wasn't it?
Actually, it was last year. And that was the first time I read the audiobooks. But
now, we are already saying read if we have listened to an audiobook. And that is the kind of age-old debate, isn't it? Is listening to an audiobook reading? What do you think, Will?
I think definitely, because whilst there are some audiobooks that don't click and translate well to the audiobook form, that's what we're trying to do today. We're highlighting the ones that, whilst the quality of the book does seep into why we're talking about these 10, mostly we're talking about, does the performance enhance the book, which I believe all of these, it does. It makes them even better. Yeah. And also it makes them so memorable. And I think, especially when you've got these incredible voice actors and narrators, it adds so much to the story, and you definitely count it as reading. There's many audiobooks I remember far more clearly than books I've read physically. Yeah,
and I completely agree. I consider, obviously, listening to an audiobook as reading. If you rewind to the medieval period, if people went to church on a Sunday and they're listening to someone preach the Bible, they would consider themselves to have read the Bible as well. So if you take that, then of course listening to a book is reading it as well. You're experiencing the story.
Very nice. So today we're going to be talking about 10 that we've both read, except I just had to choose one anomaly because it is so good.
It's actually rare that you're the rule breaker.
I know. I just thought, you know what, I'll mix and match a bit, take a leaf out of your book, out of your audiobook maybe.
Nice.
And so, there'll be one that only I've read, and the other 9 we agreed we had to compromise a little bit, choose some that one wanted, choose some the other wanted, but we love all 9 of the others. So shall I start with the anomaly so we can get that rule breaking?
You do your choice.
Right out
I
of
will
the
actually be listening to this very soon because I trust you. So,
thank you, Ed. I've got quite a good record. I think out of the 9 books, you've loved 7. 2 haven't clicked as much, but it's pretty good. Pretty good record.
I don't know about the maths, but I'm sure, again, I agree with you.
I just made up numbers. I just thought it sounds good.
Well, the thing is, 99% of stats are made up.
For the millionth time, stop exaggerating, Ed. But my
will
first
be
one
here all week.
I'm bringing in some Stephen King, the king of horror. Of course, I love reading his books physically, but the ones I've listened to have been exceptional, and I believe this one in particular was better for the reading experience. And this is Misery, which is narrated by Lindsay Krause. I'm so sorry. I'm going to mispronounce names. I'm awful at pronunciations. Crouse.
Cruise.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. But so Misery, all Krause. If you don't know, Misery is one of Stephen King's books that isn't supernatural. We have a writer, he's very famous, he's driving at night, he gets in a crash, he wakes up with broken legs in somebody's house, but he's chained down. And he finds out someone's looking after him. She's a nurse, and she's a huge fan of his books.
So convenient she's got chains, but she's a nurse too.
Yeah, but she doesn't want him to leave. This is terrifying, and it's made terrifying, I believe, a lot because of the narration. It'd be quite scary and very tense as a physical read, but Lindsay's narration, some of her scenes, it made me have goosebumps. I had to stop it and play it to Papa Gwyn just to show how amazing it is, because he loves the book. And so I was like, you need to listen to this. And it's so horrifying, you're almost laughing with dark humour. But Misery is a great book, and I think it is really just elevated because of the audiobook performance. And Stephen King is one of those authors in particular that I think his writing translates so well to being listened to, because he's quite simple in his approach.
It flows.
Exactly.
I haven't actually listened to a Stephen King book, but I'm really excited to, because especially after a recent video we did, lots of the comments were saying Stephen King's work translates so well to the Audible format.
Yeah, so I guess I should have mentioned at the beginning. Another element to this video is we're choosing authors that we think their works translate especially well. I think I tried to listen to The Sun by Philip Mayer, and I didn't really click with the audiobook. Same with, I think it was The Sun, and also with Dreaming the Eagle by Amanda Scott. Because there are multiple narrators, it didn't click as well with me, but I read it physically as exceptional. But here we're talking the ones that we think are elevated. It's alright, I'm sorry, Ed. It's subjective, just as reading is, listening is
I
as
get
well.
some books, I think some books are not dense, but they have more depth to them in terms of the prose, which makes you want to reread things. Like if I wouldn't listen to a Malazan book because I would want to reread passages, or an R. Scott Baker book. I'd like to reread things and take it in my stride. You can't really do that with Audible, with an audiobook, can you? So it's more about having like a fluid read, isn't it? And I think Stephen King definitely embodies that. And number 2 for the video, the first one I'll be talking about for the both of us is The Wolf Den by L.D. Harper. This is narrated by Antonia Beamish, and the reason I chose this, we both chose this, was because Antonia Beamish does such a wonderful job, I think, of really diving into this series, becoming the main character of Amara. And now the series is about Amara, a woman in ancient Rome who is sold into slavery, and she is forced to be a sex slave in a brothel. And the way that Antonia Beamish basically becomes Amara through her narration is remarkable. I think it conveys so much emotion, so much immersion. And this is an incredibly emotional series. And I know that the narrator does such a wonderful job of exploring these relationships through her tone. It isn't just a reading, it becomes a performance. It becomes, it's an actress. It is a performance, isn't it?
And that's a common theme in all the ones we're choosing today. The narrator's gone the extra mile.
Yeah, exactly. And these narrators have done such a wonderful job, and Antonia Beamish is no exception. This book is a wonderful book, but it translates so well because it's always harking back to someone's emotions, Amara's emotion, Amara's relationships with other people, and Antonia Beamish just does such a great job.
Very nice, Ed. Next up, I've got a titan of literature. I've got The Lord of the Rings. The audiobooks I'm talking about are those narrated by Andy Serkis.
This is number 3, by the way.
This is number 3, sorry, I should have mentioned that. So, Lord of the Rings, we don't need to talk about what makes it so exceptional. Everyone's already heard that before. But when I heard Andy Serkis was narrating these and putting them out on Audible, I thought I'm definitely going to listen to these. It's time for me to go through Lord of the Rings again. I expected brilliant performances of the characters, voices of course, what you expect from Andy Serkis. What I wasn't prepared for was how exceptional his just normal narration of the prose was. He's got just such amazing vocal control.
Yeah.
I think it really just also really had to make respect for him. You see the control that actors go through when, talking, and how they can change so much. That control is really admirable, and this is just, he captures that ethereal, magical feel, but translates to the action sequences, making them feel tense and fast-paced, and everything just seems perfect.
And he said narrating these was actually the hardest thing he's done in his career.
Really?
And it speaks to, speaks volumes to what narrators actually have to go through. Imagine sitting through, each book is 20 hours to listen to? Maybe The Hobbit's 10?
Yeah.
So that's 70 hours in a studio.
It's a lot.
With these characters, with these voices. If you don't get it right the first time, no one gets it right the first time, really, do they?
Well, there is one narrator you're talking about today that I think one of them, he basically made no mistakes.
Well, yeah,
but
to be fair,
anomaly.
Andy Serkis as well actually did his performance of The Hobbit, didn't he, during COVID? That's how he started doing the narration. So, yeah, Andy Serkis says you'll never, ever hear an orc voice this good.
No, you won't. But I think that this heightened the reading experience. Yeah. It was so clear, and I love the enforcement of the themes and the emotion of the moment.
He does humans so well, and creatures, and it's just...
He's just got a warmth to his voice that is perfect for Lord of the Rings as well.
Yeah, hard agree.
There we go. Number 3. So now, on to... Guess what comes after 3, Ed?
Number 4.
Number 4.
Traitor's Blade, which is book 1 of The Greycoats by Sebastian de Castell, is narrated by Joe Jameson. And Joe Jameson is such a good fit for this series that I actually physically can't listen to another Joe Jameson book that is not set in the world of the Greatcoats.
He is
because
that good.
It feels like it's a crime that he would narrate another series.
Yeah.
It's like seeing, I don't know, Andy Serkis in another series.
So you'd like to imagine he's not narrated anything before.
I imagine he is Falco, or he is Kest, or he is Brasty.
Yeah,
but
he's found for the Greatcoats.
You have, in the Greatcoats, you have 3 characters who are best friends, are the 3 best friends that
anybody could have.
And they have this bromance of the ages. It's the best bromance I've ever read, I think, in anything, really. And their relationship is such a huge part of why this series is brilliant, and Joe Jameson's narration of all 3 of them is wonderful. Each of them have such unique, varying personalities, and the narrator does such a great job of encapsulating those personalities with their voices as well. And he really, again, goes above and beyond probably what an audible narrator is expected to do to craft these characters alongside the author, and it just enhances the experience. His delivery of the humour, because Sebastian de Castell, to me, is the funniest writer. When he's like in the zone, his stuff is making me laugh out loud, no matter where I am. You know, if I'm in the street, if I'm shopping, if I'm on a train, I'm gonna laugh. Doesn't matter where I am. And Joe Jameson, that's all because really of his delivery of the lines. You can have something written down funny, but if you haven't got someone to, you know, perform it as well as it should be, then sometimes it won't hit the mark. But he just brings out another layer, really, of why The Greatcoats is a great series, and add Joe Jameson in the mix.
Yeah, he just captures the humour, but also the heart. The 5th one we're mentioning today is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and this is narrated by Tim Gerard Reynolds. He is an Irish narrator, and his just warmth of his voice and his accents really just captured Darrow, our main protagonist, so brilliantly. Red Rising is known for being a fast-paced, action-packed read that carries you along with the tide. This narrator, he manages to convey that feeling in the audiobook, but also he allows for those moments of reflection as well. He makes those slow moments brilliant. His dialogue is just, I'm so passionate about this. I've listened to this series twice. Often if I listen to a series, I read it physically the next time, or if I read it physically the first, I listen to it the second time.
The narrator is just that good.
I know, I just can't ever physically read this trilogy because it is so good. Darrow is just perfectly caught in his voice. If it was ever adapted into a programme or film, I just don't think I could cope with someone else's voice.
It would have to be another actor, but just dubbed by
Tim Gerard Reynolds,
Now, there's 2 things that he does really well. Firstly, what a nice singing voice. He has a proper Irish, like, pub singing voice, doesn't he? It's beautiful. It's, you know, it could call the cows in to be milked, I'm sure. That's not a euphemism, by the way. And, so... He sings beautifully, and then also, I think this series has a lot of fury in it, and he conveys anger.
It's like a
in
deep
his
rage,
voice
isn't it?
So well. You know, this is all about a rebellion and a rising. So he does a great job, and I love. I'd love to read or listen to more that he's read. I know that he's narrated Michael J. Sullivan's series, so if you've read that or listened to it, let us know in the comments below. Is that something that you think we would enjoy? Would we like listening to it? Has he got this kind of same kind of tone?
Captured in Words actually mentioned that Ryria Revelations was amongst his favourite audiobooks, and what he thinks the best audiobooks.
Well, we trust Jay, don't we?
Yeah, so there we go. So that's number 5. Ed, on to number 6.
Number 6, how can we have any list about listening to books if we don't mention Papa Gwyn? And I'm choosing, we both chose, didn't we? But
we did.
I put this one forward, of Wrath.
Well, should we talk about number 7 at the same time then? Which is actually...
Well, they're different narrators, so I think no.
Okay.
Well, I think we'll talk about.
We'll just hide number 7 for a second.
But you can still hold that up. I think let's go. If we go into The Faith and the Fallen of Blood and Bone, all narrated by the great Damien Lynch. Damien Lynch does such a wonderful job, and I remember him being very much in contact with Papa Gwyn about the voices, about crafting these characters for people to listen to, and how he took on board so much of Papa Gwyn's advice as well. And you know, Papa Gwyn had lots of Irish, Welsh, Celtic mythology influence behind a lot of these characters. And if you look at the central cast, who are from Ardan, Corban, Dath, Brina, Cohen, then they all have this Irish twang to them, which is wonderful to hear.
True.
And I think he does a great job with all of his accents. And I've never listened to someone in a book have a South African accent and think that actually fits, that as or a Liverpudlian accent.
Both in the same world.
In the same world. So usually I was a bit of a snub about accents. But he did such a great job, and I think now he's become the characters to me, and I can't think of Dath without thinking of his little Irish accent, or I can't think of Kraft without thinking of him going Steeler. So yeah, and
I think you'll be doing an audio.
And I chose. Well, we chose Raph, didn't we? Yeah, maybe that's the dream.
We did,
but we chose Raph, didn't we? Because I think there's so much range in Raph, and he really delivers. Like, he's a fantastic, audible postman.
Oh, he is, definitely. And Raph has the most characters in it, so...
Also true. And, there's a lot of death in Raph.
There is a lot of death.
Yeah, so I think that's why we chose Raph, isn't it? And onto the Shadow of the Gods, who is...
Oh, yeah, if you didn't know what number 7 is, we've got Colin Mace was the narrator of The Shadow of the Gods. We are very privileged and honoured to get a lot of the backstage stuff, don't we, behind the screen. And as you said with Damien Lynch, the same occurs for Colin Mace, who contacted Papa Gwyn a lot, really making sure that he could do the best he could in this performance. Pronunciations, tone, atmosphere, delivery.
It was hard, wasn't it, to really choose the right audible narrator, because we weren't sure whether, obviously, the main character is Orca.
Yeah.
Whether it should be a female chosen to do the role. But after we heard a clip from Colin Mace, we couldn't say anyone else. His voice just fitted this cold, like, iron grit.
I was going to say,
world.
His gravelly voice has the grit of the world that Papa Gwyn really has in The Bloodsworn. It's quite different to The Faith from the Fallen in how dark it is. It's kind of gritty, fighting for survival, even if you're not in the great battle for good or evil. There is just... You've got your own intimate story in Shadow of the Gods. That's Orca's got her own story. The other POVs have their own story, but they're dragged into wider events. Colin Mace really delivers the tone and atmosphere, but he also manages to vary it up enough. So again, that key word, range. He has that range of emotion, range of pacing, range of delivery, and it's just great. Shadow of the Gods is awesome on its own, and Colin Mace does an incredible job adapting it to audiobook format.
And the next one for me is...
number 8.
Well, there are 2 more that I'm going to be talking about. I'll talk about the first one for now, but both of these, to me, feel like partnerships of author and narrator, and I actually can't think about them without thinking about them both. So the first one I'd like to talk about is God of Vengeance by Giles Christian, narrated by Philip Stevens, who I think Philip Stevens probably my favourite narrator. He does such a wonderful job of really capturing Giles Christian's sense of prose, sense of fluidity, his voices, and this like deep melancholy of the world. But he also has such a great voice for characters, and he embodies humour through his voice. He has this, whenever, there's a lot of fighting in Giles Christian's books, especially God of Vengeance, because it is essentially the story of Hamlet, but in my opinion, an even better version. It is, it's a better version of The Lion King, where we are in, I believe, 8th century Norway, I think. It's 8th century Scandinavia, or it might be 9th century. It's the Viking Age.
It's around that time period.
The Viking, settlements. And Giles Christian's writing about a boy who is the son of a Jarl who watches his father get, killed. And then he makes a vow, basically, to come back and reclaim his kingdom. Basically.
We love a story of vengeance, and we love the found family that's in God of Vengeance. I also love Philip Stevens' narration. I love Giles Christian's works, which is why in number 9, we have Lancelot. Ooh. So, you love the narration of Lancelot, but I said, please, can we have both? Both books by Giles Christian in this list, because Lancelot is the first audiobook I ever listened to. And I have you to thank for that. I remember getting the bus to college. Usually I talk to people for about a week. I just stayed silent because I was just listening to this. And it's my first audiobook experience, so maybe there's a bit of sentimental value.
A few times.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of sentimental value, of course, but Philip Stevens, this is Arthurian legends, so he manages to deliver the grit and the dark theme and tone of God of Vengeance, the Rise of Sigurd series, doesn't he? But this is Arthurian legend, and he adds that ethereal, magical edge to the writing. Giles Christian is delivering quite a stark historical fiction delivery of the Arthurian legend, but it still has that feel, the tragedy, the heroism, the good versus bad, heroic figures who do dark deeds.
Yeah.
And Philip Stevens encapsulates that in his narration. I completely agree, Ed. I can't imagine a Giles Christian book not being narrated by Philip Stevens.
It'd be a travesty.
It would be a travesty. And so Lancelot is a fantastic book, and it is just narrated brilliantly by Philip Stevens.
And what I love that you said, Will, was that you said it has this like kind of sentimental value attached to it because it's the first one you listen to, but also it changed your world of listening to books. I remember listening to Philip Stevens narrating Raven for the first time, which is another Giles Christian book, and I was like, oh my goodness, the sense of atmosphere that he's created with this is amazing. And I love the way that audiobooks can also become nostalgic and you can have an emotional connection to them. I remember listening to Malice on the train where Papa Gwyn and I were going up for a book event, I think at Goldsborough Books. And there was a key character death. We were listening near the end, and we were both just sitting there crying on the train. And then Papa Gwyn was like, "This is all right, isn't it? Actually, this is sad.
Yeah,
this author's horrible." But those memories you can also have. It's not just about reading; it's also about listening to a book. So yeah,
very nice. And now Ed, on to the last.
So the last one, the ninth one is this number 9? Number 10. The 10th one is, of course, a Abercrombie Stephen Pacey partnership, and in my opinion, I don't know if you agree, Will, but the best listen in the First Law world is The Heroes.
Well, I physically read this, but you told me I have to put the book down and listen to the Gorse chapters.
Yes. Now, it is the story of a war. It is essentially A Bridge Too Far. You are following the perspectives of two sides, a smattering of perspectives on either side. As it is a 3 or 4 day battle. That is 4. I think it's a 3-day battle. And you have the key character of Bremer Dan Gorst, who is the king's advisor. He's kind of not the advisor. He's the king's informant, isn't he? He's on the front lines. He is a warrior. He is someone who wants to be fighting. He has a deep rage and frustration in him at his core, but he is having to write letters to the king to talk about the progress as their side are fighting against the Northmen. But he somehow gets involved in the fighting, doesn't he? But what's great about him is that he has all of these really horrific, deep, dark thoughts. And then when he speaks, it is like he is David Beckham or he has inhaled helium. And his voice is about 17 octaves higher than it should be for a man that size, that scary. And Stephen Pacey's narration of that is just so funny.
The funniest scenes I've ever listened to.
It is one of our most quoted kind of stuff from me and Papa Gwyn, that we'll just say Bremer Dan Gorst lines to each other in the voice, and it's just so funny. But Stephen Pacey also does an amazing job of grasping characters, and the way that he finds character voices or character personalities is by adapting their voices to things that suit them. And I really love the way that he takes this kind of artistic license with them, which is really exciting for me because, again, it becomes a performance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you. Do you want to
no, I totally agree.
Have you listened to? You've listened to Stephen Pacey.
I have indeed. I've listened to Best Served Cold.
Nice.
And much of it.
Again, Nicomo Koska's voice in that is fantastic.
Yeah. I was going to say, of course, his performances of the accents are exceptional, and I would say, especially when you think of characters like Gorse, they are the standout.
And it merges so well with Abercrombie's dialogue.
It does, but I think it's almost because people talk about that so much, they kind of neglect to discuss Stephen Pacey's just grasp of the tone and atmosphere again. Abercrombie has a lot of action sequences, and with that, he makes sure to reflect the character's mindset in his writing.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lot more strip pack to make it hit hard.
Yeah.
And Stephen Pacey makes sure to deliver that via audiobook.
And that is our list of our favourite audiobooks. And it's been exciting. It's been a great listen, hopefully, for you guys.
Hopefully.
But let us know in the comments below.
An audiobook?
What are your favourite audiobooks? Let us know if you've been listening to us or just watching us mime.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting. Maybe an audio video is what we just delivered.
Possibly. But thank you for sticking with us. Anything else, Will?
Let us know if there's any audiobooks you love in the description below. Any we missed, maybe. There's quite a few we didn't talk about because, of course, only highlighting 10. Let us know if you haven't actually listened to any audiobooks, but you intend to. That'd be great to hear. Hopefully we've kind of nudged you in that direction to at least try it out.
Very nice. That's all from us.
Truth and courage. The brothers go in.